Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are getting back on track with our weekly meta updates where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder for each of the formats on MTG Arena. Explore, Historic, Standard, and depending on what the kind of flavor of the month is, maybe Alchemy. We'll look at both the best of 1 and best of 3 for the respective videos. This particular video will be starting off with Standard best of 1. As I get enough data for the Brothers War release, throughout the week we'll be dropping future videos for each of the other formats as well. So make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to be up to date with the best performing decks, how to get to Mythic, definitely a spot to check out. And we're getting all this data from Untapped.gg, what you see on the screen. It's a companion tool that runs alongside your Arena client, tracks win rates, loss rates, deck collection stuff, in-game overlays, whole bunch of useful features, so you can check that out. Link is in the video description down below, but I will also paste all these deck lists for you. So if you want to copy paste, you want to be a filthy net decker like all of us are at heart, you can definitely just copy these lists into Arena. I'll do it so you can even just import it from mobile. But jumping in, we are looking at November 15th through the 20th, the first 5 days. Platinum to Mythic rank of Standard best of 1, 180,000 games of Magic played. And the top performing deck thus far has been Azorius Soldiers. So this is a kind of evolution, and you'll see also a mono white version of the deck as well. Of like these aggro style strategies, very linear. You have kind of card advantages built in with the soldier package and a lot of mana sinks, which is nice. So this particular version, you got like Recruitment Officer, 1 mana 2/1 soldier, 4 mana. You can pump into it and get like creature cards 3 mana or less into your hand. You got Yotian Frontliner that when it attacks, it gets another creature larger, and it can be unearthed, so you can basically get it from the graveyard into the battlefield. It gets hasted in the turn, and then you exile it. Denick happens to be a soldier, 2 creatures in 1. Harbin is a good body, 2 mana, 3/2 flyer. That gives you the upside if you have 5 or more soldiers attacking, they all get flying. Resolute Reinforcement just as a flash threat, 2 soldier bodies. Thalia for tax. Valiant Veteran as a lord and a late game mana sink. So you got mana sink 1, mana sink 2, and there'll be more mana sinks along the way. Your removal package is Brutal Cathar in this version, as well as a couple copies of Wandering Emperor. The Siege Veteran allows you to pump up your team. Gives you kind of Luminarch Aspirant vibes of a counter each turn on combat. And then whenever another non-token soldier you control dies, you get a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact token. That pairs really nicely with Sky Strike Officer, 3 mana, 2/3 flyer. When it attacks, you get a soldier token. And then you could also tap 3 untapped soldiers to draw cards. So kind of more accrued card advantage. So you have 8 pieces of card advantage in terms of creatures. And then you also have the mana sinks in Recruitment Officer, the Valiant Veteran, and then we also have 4 copies of Fortified Beachhead. So it's an untapped land if you have soldier, either in hand or in play. And then it also lets you pay 5 mana, including the land, to give all your soldiers +1/1 till end of turn. A couple copies of Plaza Hero. You got legendaries in Harbin, Denick, Thalia, and the Wandering Emperor to kind of play with that. You have Mishra's Foundry as a creature land as well, and then 1 copy of Secluded Courtyard. Kind of paired into that. You could probably get away with even more copies of Secluded Courtyard, to be honest. There's not really a downside to doing so, and it just lets you play more untapped lands, but kind of playing with that. So that was a 72% win rate. We then have, there's quite a few variants of mono red that are going around. A little bit more Bernie package. This version here is pretty straight what was previous standard. So you have like Kumanos, Phoenix Chick, Play with Fire, Lightning Strikes, the Radas Firebrand, Stormseeker, Thundering Raiju. You should be playing Sokuzen in this particular version. I'm actually going to pull up one other copy of the mono red just so folks can see. I'll link both of these if you're interested. This one is a mechanized warfare, so it's got about an 8% lower win rate right now. The big thing is with this particular version, you're a little weak to Shieldred. You don't have as much kind of late game oomph, if you want to call it that. This mono red deck just hits harder. You got like Raijus, Stormseekers, Radas Firebrand can get blockers out of the way. Devastator goes over the top. With Mechanized Warfare, it makes all your red spells or creatures deal 1 additional point, including artifacts. So like Ping effects off Aldaran Aperture, the End of the Festivals deals 2 damage to each creature, or stacks depending on the number you have. Kumano deals 2 damage. I found with some of these lower to the ground, like Mono Black is going to be quite prevalent, and they just have a lot of ways to gum up the board. Incidental life gain, Shieldred also just kind of kills you. So it was a little bit worse, but Reckless Impulse, like I was trying another one without Mechanized Warfare and Jaya and more copies of Chandra, and it's a little tough once they resolve a Shieldred. So then we have Mono White Soldiers, and this is kind of like the deck I've been playing most, and I'll show you kind of my variant as well. So this one's 65% win rate. So a lot of the similarities with the blue-white. You have your recruitment offers, Yotian, Thalia, Valiant Veteran, Siege Veteran, Brutal Cathar. You also have some number of copies of Myrel, Shield of Argive. 4 mana, 3/4. Basically, your opponent can't cast spells, artifacts, enchantments, creatures, activate their abilities either during your turn, and when it attacks, you get to create X soldier tokens, where X is the number of soldiers you control, so kind of a snowball-y effect. You also get copies of Guardian of New Benalia in this particular version. The access to white lets you play lay down arms, 1 mana, basically kind of Souls to Plowshare-esque. They gain 3 life, but you get to exile any permanent equal to CMC, whereas the number of planes you have. There's quite a few variations of this deck where the number of Myrel kind of vary, and the number of Mishra's Foundry. I've actually been playing, I was playing a little bit more on mobile, but very similar kind of configuration. I was trying to Extraction Specialist. I actually cut them. I went to 3 Myrel, 1 of the Day-Night, the 3 mana Ward 1, if it's from the Innistrad set, I forget its name, but then I'm also playing some copies of Fortified Beachhead. It makes the lay down the arms slightly worse, but realistically, you only need 2 to 3 on average, maybe 4 planes for this to be really effective. But the Fortified Beachhead just being an anthem effect for your lords tends to be better anyways. But otherwise, this deck here just kind of kills quite quickly. Puts a lot of pressure even against stuff like mono red or stuff like that. So that's like the mono white version. I put my profile on Untapped so you can always see everything I've been playing. I haven't been playing too much this month, but like even the red deck that I was doing with more burn, if you're interested, I was just kind of playing around with stuff. You can also see all my historical decks as well. Just do current and previous set. You can see everything I've played, including when I got #1 Mythic. So then we got Mono Black Aggro. Again, this is another deck that can be built in many different ways. Invoke, no invoke Liliana, some Lilianas. But this particular version is going a little bit more aggressively focused. So some of them are playing Knights of Death Shadow. Because it has Menace, it plays nice with Gix. Gets you to draw some cards. You're also seeing the 2 mana, when a creature dies, gets exiled. What's its name? It's going to bother me. This guy here, Misery Shadow. Some of the lists are playing copies of Misery Shadow in there. Misery Shadow is actually really good against like these mono white decks because Siege Veteran, it gets exiled. Same with like Valiant Veteran or an Earth Threats. So you have some availability there. Ashnaughts, it's a 1 mana 1/1 Death Touch, so your opponent doesn't really want to trade with it necessarily, so then it lets you draw cards with Gix. Cut downs, Go for Throats, Infernal Grasp as a removal package. You still have your copies of like Evolved Sleeper, Tenacious Underdog, Tainted Adversary kind of mixed in there. Phyrexian Fleshgorger, my favorite card from the set. Either 3 mana, 3/3 Menace Lifelink, your opponent has to take some damage in order to kill it, or 7 mana, 7/5 with kind of the same stats. Shieldred and copies of Invoke Despair. And then you have your mana base, Mishras, Takanuma, and Swamps kind of mixed into there. The Celestia Enchantments deck is largely unchanged, and by largely I mean in no way unchanged. So if you don't have any of the new cards, you can still play this deck. The easiest thing right off the bat, play the Celestia Painland. It gives you access to an untapped dual land, which is really important for being able to play like 1 mana spells on curve properly without like the farmhand coming in. So I make that change at least. I'm not going to go over this deck in too much detail because it's been a deck that we've been featuring for the last few months, to be honest. but including it because it still has about a 58% win rate. We then go to Rakdos Mishra. So this is going to be the meld with this card here that's not showing up right now for whatever reason, is the Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Let's see if it shows up like this. Phyrexian Dragon Engine. So it melds into like the big Mishra dragon creature. Kind of basically, if you can meld it, you kill them out of nowhere, but it's a little bit more aggressively slanted Rakdos deck. Mishra lets you drain and gain when it attacks on its own, so individually both cards are playable, which is reasonable to include. Similar package to Mono Black with Cut Down, Go for the Throat, Infernal Grasp. Playing 8 Sagas, Kumanos, and Akiba. You got some copies of Blood Tithe Harvester and Tenacious Underdog mixed in here. Yogg for card draw, Fable because Fable's busted, Burn Down, and Shieldred on the top end. And then you got like Sokuzan, Takanuma, stuff like that mixed in as well. Again, another deck similar to the Selesnya Enchantment deck. Mono Blue hasn't really changed all that much, if any. 57% win rate, so that's why we're going to include it here because it is a good deck. Then we're going to Grixis midrange, and there's a couple different versions of Grixis. Grixis tends to do better in best of 3 in general. It's like the top deck in best of 3. Because it's got a lot of flexibility in terms of the sideboard, how you can board in, become more control, more aggressive, more interactive, however you want. But this version here is opting to go with the Blade Coil Serpent at the top end. Some of them were playing Phyrexian Flesh Gorger, others weren't. So the top end here, it's Serpent, 6 mana or X. So you could pay 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 mana if you want. And then just based on the combination of what you're paying, double blue draws you a card, double black makes your opponent discard, double red gives +1/0 trample and haste for your Serpent till end of turn. Evelyn, Solkanar top end, card advantage, and just a whole bunch of ETB effects. And then you kind of got your go-to package, Corpse Praiser, Fable, Blood Tithe Harvester, bunch of removal, interaction, and Shieldred because Shieldred is busted. And then lastly, blue-white control. So similar, this is a meld version. This is the Meek and Strong Stone. What's it called? The Might Stone and the Weak Stone. So 5 mana artifact, ETBs, taps for 2 mana. When you use these Bs, either target creature gets -5/5 or you draw 2 cards. And this is kind of control deck. You got Ursa to meld with it, gives you cost reduction, bunch of sweepers, farewell, bunch of planeswalkers, new to fairy, very, very good. The one thing I would say with this deck is it's very much built with like a mid-range focus in mind, and you are going to die very quickly to Zoria Soldiers or Mono Red when you're relying on just targeted removal, especially when they go wide. I would strongly suggest switching up some number of these spells. Maybe it be some copies of Bankbuster, maybe it be like a copy of Negate or some Syncopates. You're going to want some the 4 mana Sweeper, Depopulate. You'll want probably 1 or 2 more March, just to kind of keep up with these more aggressive decks. While these cards are very good and powerful, if you're not answering your board or relying solely on 2 farewells, you're probably going to fall pretty far behind in those matchups. So that's pretty much it for the week. My dog says hi. Let me know what you've been playing in Best of 1 as always. And like I said, once we get Best of 3 data, we'll get that up in terms of video, Explore, Historic. We'll get as much content as we can. I appreciate the patience, as the first week is always the toughest to curate. Like Best of 1 standard always goes the fastest, but I'm trying to pull this together as quick as possible so you have the most information at hand that you can get to Mythic with. You can play tournaments if you're going on paper, whatever it may be. But I appreciate folks stopping by as kind of your meta stop. Thanks as always. Have a great one and stay safe out there.